Hi, I'm Rob and this is Jim. We're from Radio Birdman.
And you're watching Rage.
You're watching Rage?
Yeah.
And we've selected some pretty choice videos to entertain you for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, VJ. Video jockeys. All right, so this is a Radio Birdman song called Burn My Eye. Now, just to make everything plain and correct here, I wasn't actually part of the band when this record was recorded, but fortunately, somehow or other, I ended up in the band in the year 2002. Thank you very much, Rob. It's been such a great pleasure, mainly because when I first heard this particular record, along with the very first E and the first album that the band had made, it was a real change in my whole perception about where I would be operating as a musician in the industry at that particular point. And I will point out, as I pointed out to Murray Engelhardt, who is about to produce a book called Retaliate First, about Radio Birdman and the scene that was developing around Oxford Street at that particular time in the early 70s. What changed my life was actually seeing Radio Birdman back in the 1970s at the Bondi Lifesaver, ditching the band that I was in at the time, going up to Sydney, forming my own band, getting our own little club together. The band was called the Survivors. We had a club called the Curry Kitchen where a lot of bands used to play, and started developing our own particular style of independent music. So I do consider things like Burn My Eye, the first album, the first EP, to be really fundamental in a sort of a dramatic change and shift in my life that led to me sitting on this couch right here today. Ladies and gentlemen, Burn My Eye, Radio Birdman.
Union City Blue by Blondie. It's a fabulous song. It's so anthemic. But I was in London about 10 years ago, and some friends there took me along to this festival called Love Box, and Blondie were headlining, and they opened with Union City Blue, and it was just amazing. It was just so majestic and thrilling. I had tears in my eyes. It was really fantastic. I loved it. Really marvellous group live.
It's got an anthemic quality, that thing too.
It's hard to go wrong with Clem Burke playing the drums. And he's such a snappy dresser too. Let's face it. I mean, if people have often said, well, I don't know what I'm going to want to wear for a gig, for this gig. And they say, just wear what Clem Burke would wear. Or the Scientists, that sort of thing. Anyway, Union City Blue. Enjoy this. I'm sure you've seen it before, but it's wonderful.
Okay, the next song is, the next video clip is by a band called the KINKS. Many people would know the KINKS because, they are such a famous band and much covered and much loved by people through the generations since they were producing some of their great stuff in the 1960s. Ray Davies, in this particular song, it's kind of interesting because he's taking a bit of a swipe at people with money and their sort of irresponsibility and lack of awareness about what's going on in their lives, especially when it comes to their love life and everything. So it's a bit of a sort of cynical take on English society back in those days. I was also looking at it, if this is the clip again, and I was thinking, this is really resonant of one of those KINKS tunes that really would have introduced Britpop, back in the 1980s, and how especially people like Blur were really, really, really impressed by them, and sort of, although they didn't sort of copy them, they really took the spirit of what they were doing. So it's a little bit of a sort of historical moment in the evolution of music over 20 or 30 years, and this is sort of the roots of it all. It's a lovely song, Mr. Pleasant by the KINKS.
So the next song, and I'm not too sure if we've got the version I'm familiar with. It's a song by the Celibate Rifles called Electric Flowers. I was fortunate enough to be working with the band in the studio when we did this one. It's a really marvellous track. It's Damien Lovelock, the singer. He died not so long ago. It's a great loss. He's a fantastic person. But he talked a lot about this song because it's about his character that lived in Bondi. I think it was Kev the Head or something, and he was a local luminary, and people probably thought he was a bit mad, but he was a very singular a hermit sort of person with a real philosophical bent. And quite intriguing the way Damien explained it to me. Anyway, so they put a song together, and it's really cool. It's quite melodic. It's got some great parts in it. Some beautiful guitar playing by Dave Morris on that one. Very original stuff. And so I hope it is the version that you've got in your library there. Electric Flowers, fabulous. So here it is.
The next video is by an artist called Donovan. I chose this because Donovan has been a permanent fixture in my life ever since I can remember when, but he's a remarkable artist because he is constantly evolving and constantly using very, very interesting musicians to play with him. Some of you may remember that he had Jeff Beck playing on one of his records, Jimmy Page playing on one of his records. And he's actually got a new album out as well with Nigel Kennedy, the classical violinist, playing, Danny Thompson, the great English double bass player playing. But this one is an interesting kind of film clip because it's been made by David Lynch. Yeah, and Donovan and David Lynch got together back in the year 2010 when they both found they had a similar interest in transcendental meditation. And it's a wonderful video. It's intriguing. It's kind of almost menacing in a way. But I only saw it a couple of weeks ago, and I thought this has got to be up there. For anyone who thought Donovan has gone away, no, he hasn't. He's still there, 78 years old, still powering.
Yes, Blood Rushes by Melbourne band CIVIC. That's the next one up. Once again, I was fortunate enough to be in the room when they recorded this one. This is a really good band, and they hit like a sledgehammer. They're really fabulous band. They really rock. This one's probably more on the melodic side compared to some of their others, which are more balls out punk in style. But all of it's fabulous as far as I'm concerned, and the records that I didn't work on. And I like them very much as people. And we're going to be playing with them in about 6 or 7 weeks as well. They're playing with Radio Birdman down in Melbourne. Blood Rushes, yeah, it's fabulous. It's a really catchy record, catchy song. Hope you like it. Okay, so the next selection, there's two involved. Firstly, there's a press conference with Lou Reed at Sydney Airport, which is pretty amusing and pretty edifying, actually. Tells you a lot about what an obtuse person he must have been. I won't go into that too deeply. So he came out of that press conference, and the guitar player in our band, in Radio Birdman, Dennis Tech, he went to the airport that day to meet, with the express intention of meeting Lou Reed and give him a T-shirt, one of our band T-shirts. And so he introduced himself, and Lou told him he was in a local band, and Lou said, yeah, I was in a band once too. And he said, so are you playing anywhere? And he said, oh yeah, we've got a gig. And he said, I might come along to it. Well, which Dennis, of course, took with a grain of salt, and we did later on. But nonetheless, with that information, we lined up a gig in Sydney, which became it was the Oxford Hotel in Darlinghurst, and we went to the owner there and scored a residency on the basis of getting all these people along, because Lou Reed might show up, but we never promised that he would. And so we renamed that hotel the Funhouse, and there was a whole scene that sort of accreted, if you like, itself to that venue, and it was quite a focal point for the Darlinghurst scene. So, because when Lou came out, Dennis was saying that he said, you see those people over there, jerked his thumb over his shoulder, and he said, fucking animals. And he was talking about all the journalists, these media squares that had given him a grilling, and he's just taken the piss out of them completely. and you'll see that from the interview. The gig, as far as I know, is the one I saw at the Hordern Pavilion. I hope it is, but it's really fabulous. Don't know about the sound quality, but he's a natural front man. He went from being a guitar player, singer, to ditching that and just, I don't know what he was taking. He slimmed down like he did and looked so sort of, I don't know, sinewy, and there's something snake-like and malevolent about him in his performance, but it's really captivating. And I think I went 2, maybe 3 nights in a row to see that. And it was the best concert I'd ever seen, up to that point anyway. It was a long time ago. So this is Rock and Roll by Lou Reed. The next one's Eternally Yours by the Laughing Clowns. My connection to the song goes back to when I saw them at this place, the Stage Door Tavern in Sydney. It was their first Sydney gig, and sort of really dark music, really impressive. And but what I remember, apart from this dark music, was the where the lights hanging from above the stage, the blue and the green ones that divided their faces into those 2 colours. They're really, really marvellous. Really, an alien persona they seem to be putting across. I was quite captivated, and I'm so impressed by Louise Elliott's saxophone playing. It's so marvellous, really, and there's plenty of that on this song. So really, the stuff she's playing by the end of this song, staggeringly good, I think. Wonderful record. Eternally Yours.
Okay, Van Morrison, not Van Morrison, but before Van Morrison there was a band called Them, and Van Morrison was the singer and harp player in this band. Great Irish R&B band at a time when the harmonica was king, at a time when I personally was growing up. I was quite young. My sister's record collection was coming into the house, and the first Them album came in, and I was going, what the hell was this? I knew about the Stones, but I didn't know about Them. And there's something really propulsive about the kind of music that was going on in those days. Nowadays they categorise it as freak beat. It's a very frenetic kind of pilled up mod kind of dance music, really based on kind of blues but sped up, great riffs, great harp playing, and a great energy. And I think it's music like this that kind of propelled me onwards into the world that I cared to join and eventually ended up staying in because of this particular kind of song. So if you don't know too much about Van's early career, then I would suggest you step into the Them catalogue, because it is really, really exciting. And this particular song it's a really old 1930s song. Big Bill Brunsey, is it? 35, I think it was, it came out.
Is it Bill Brunsey?
Yeah.
Not John Lee Hooker?
Oh, no, not John Lee Hooker.
Okay.
It's Bill, I can't remember, but it's a really early song.
Oh, I think the credit's to Williams on my single.
Yeah, it's
Who's
kind
that?
of like that. it's
Big Joe Williams.
Yeah, Big Joe Williams, or it's one of those old blues guys from the 30s anyway. They've updated it, they've given it a lot of stick, and it just great song, fantastic guitar in it. Them.
This is the live one, isn't it? Though?
Baby Please Don't Go. And this is kind of, you don't know whether it's live. I'm not quite sure whether it's live or a mime thing, but it's still got the energy of the record. Anyway, if you've never seen them or heard of them, here you go. Them, Baby Please Don't Go.
The next one is that I've chosen is Led Zeppelin's Immigrant song. It's off their 3rd album. By that time, their 3rd album, I'd kind of cooled off on them a bit. I sort of lost interest. I was listening to other stuff, and but I went along to Sydney Showground to see them nonetheless. Still curious, and I didn't have a very good vantage point. Sort of right over to the right and beyond the PA there and all that, and I wasn't terribly engaged. And then when John Bonham did his drum solo on this song Moby Dick, he plays it with his hands, for God's sake. And all of that, I'm out of here, and didn't give it much thought after that. And years later, I saw this clip, possibly on Rage, and it's shot from the side of the stage. And I've used the phrase earlier in relation to Civic, but these guys, it just hit like a bloody sledgehammer. It was amazing, the power of it. You know, it was just sensational. And I just went, oh, well, that's what I missed. Whether I would have caught it that way, being down the front, I don't know. But yeah, it was fabulous. So that's probably one that got away. But this is a cracking version of the song, the Immigrant song. So, well, the next song is Stoneage Cinderella by Died Pretty. And I declare once again self-interest in the songs. I worked in the studio on it. It's fabulous. It's a great tune, really imaginative lyrics and a really great compressed arrangement. Wonderful scabrous guitar break by Brett on it. It's really terrific. The band looks great. But I have to mention really that it's also sad to think about it because Ron Pino, the vocalist, he died last year. He was much loved and a really fabulously talented person, and you know, he's missed by a lot of people. And but he and the band, you know, left a great legacy. There's a huge body of work there, really varied and really deep. And you know, it was my privilege to actually work with him for a while there. And if you don't know this song, I think you're going to really like it. But if you know it, you probably like it already. Stoneage Cinderella.
Okay, this next song's by an artist called Pete Townsend, who most of you would know as being the guitar player and songwriter of The Who, and he put out this fabulous solo album in 1980 called Empty Glass, with a song called Rough Boys. Now, what it's about, you know, there's conjecture about what it's about, but what I found out, which was very interesting, and, you know, when one goes on these searches, one doesn't know exactly how much is true or not, but on the flip side, there's a song called And I Moved, and that's not on any of the playlists, sadly. But I was reading about And I Moved, and apparently Pete Townsend offered it to Bette Midler. But Bette Midler refused it on account that it was too provocatively sexy, which casts sort of aspersions about both sides of the record as to exactly what they were both about. But anyway, I'll leave that to you. It's a fantastic song. Rough Boys by Pete Townsend.
Hi, I'm Rob, and this is Jim.
And we're from Radio Birdman.
We both found ourselves in the same damn group.
Funnily enough.
You're watching Rage.
Okay, so the next song is a song called Harlem by Bill Withers, which is a little bit left of field for the stuff that we've been going through so far. Now, I was curious that when I was looking through the Rage Red Book that there was very little familiar music, black music, that I could choose from. And I was thinking, well, you know, what shall I do here? And then I saw this Bill Withers song. Now, I know he's really famous for a song called Ain't No Sunshine, but I'd never heard this song Harlem before. So I stuck it up and I went, hey, this is really kind of interesting song because it's actually a memory of a time back in the 1970s when there was all that ghetto music coming out. Do you remember that stuff? Mm-hmm. There was Marvin Gaye, there was Donny Hathaway, there was Curtis Mayfield, even the Supremes did Love Chimes.
Yeah, early Isaac Hayes, possibly.
Yeah, Isaac Hayes. There was a lot of stuff. There was a kind of a whole genre of music that sort of really spotlight the conditions in the ghetto and in American cities. And I'd never heard this Bill Withers stuff. But then I read a bit more about him and I found out that he was actually working in an aircraft factory until he was about 30 years old and then decided to make music. And when he went out and made this album, he did it with, you know, one of the people that I really loved from the 60s who used to work with Stax, a guy called Booker T. Jones, who was in Booker T and the MGs and he used to back up Otis Redding, Sam and Dave and all the great Stax things. So it's kind of, for me, it's a revelation, this song, because I don't really know it that well, but it's a reminder of stuff that was actually kind of hip back in that early 70s period that you don't hear an awful lot of anymore. So I thought, hey, Jim, you've got time to give something some air here, so there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Withers, Harlem. Okay, this is the BRMC, aka Black Rebel, what do you say? Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, and the song called
Whatever Happened to My Rock and Roll?
Indeed, Whatever Happened to My Rock and Roll. Now, it's interesting that Rob's chosen a Lou Reed song called Rock and Roll, because I was going to preface the introduction of this song by saying that there are great rock and roll anthems in the world. And I think probably, I mean, I'll just name a couple of them. And of course, the first one is Chuck Berry, rock and roll music. Second one is the Velvet Underground, rock and roll, which Rob just described. Lou Reed is playing in Sydney. And this is number 3, although there are a plethora of other ones indeed. But I think all of these records tell you what is really important about rock and roll music.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of rock and roll. There's songs with that phrase in the title that aren't very bloody good at all.
Yeah, well, I know, but because
they think that just putting that in the title is enough to
it's kind of good,
to carry the day. But I'm afraid not.
But I think that when Chuck Berry writes that song about the backbeat, that's number one thing. Number 2 in Lou Reed's version, he says, and it was all right. Right, we used to turn on the radio and she heard rock and roll music.
His life was saved.
The life was saved by rock and roll. And then when the Black Rebel Motorcycle come along, they talk about, I fell in love, with these things about the music that made it really, really important. And I just went, that resonates all the way through. Those 3 particular songs just get it right, and what makes rock and roll, to me personally, really, really important. It's a driving, it's an energy, the 4/4 beat, the backbeat, the stuff that makes you love, makes you happy. It's just completely, utterly glorious, and it's an art form that I've been sort of not worshipping but subscribing to for pretty much all my life. Even go back to that freak beat stuff all the way through, and I think that it's going to be, like Chuck said, it's going to be a kind of feeling about music that I won't lose. So here we go, the Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, and Whatever Happened to My Rock and Roll. Hi, I'm Jim, and this is...
I'm Rob.
I'm Rob, and we're from...
Radio Birdman.
And you are watching...
Rage.
All right, we're back into the retro world with Jim here, everybody. This is the Moody Blues song, Seesaw. This is taken off an album called In Search of a Lost Chord. Now, I'm using this as a kind of surrogate for a band called the Chemistry Set, who I'm a really big fan of, and they're a modern band. They're a modern band from England, a very, very psychedelic band who drew a lot of their inspiration from the 1960s British psychedelic era and from the Moody Blues themselves. In fact, they did a version of one of the songs off In Search of the Lost Chord, Legend of a Mind, which is the song about Timothy Leary. And that one there, which is a fabulous version. And so, in a way, the Moody Blues is, the inspiration for a band that I love really today. And also, the other thing about that song is I just think about that particular time when they were recording this, when life was, I guess, a lot freer, a lot more experimental. There were a lot of boundaries that were being challenged and crossed at the time. And the spirit of the song is all about that, about, taking those chances, going somewhere where you haven't been before, getting out of the 9-to-5 routine that probably people are still wishing they could do these days, which was still on people's minds back in the 1960s. But it is a fabulous song, and it starts off with this really great intro. If you're going to get sort of freaked out and spooked out by some sort of philosophical rambling, here you go. Welcome to Psychedelia 1960s, everybody. The Moody Blues.
Hi, I'm Rob, and this is Jim.
And we're from Radio Birdman.
We both found ourselves in the same damn group.
Funny enough.
You're watching Rage. Hi, my name's Rob.
And I'm Jim.
We're from Radio Birdman.
And you're watching Rage.
Well, the next film clip is one of our own. This is a Radio Birdman doing Aloha Stephen Deno. All put together after our first incarnation, so it incorporates stills and live stuff, including a new nice shot of our manager, George Kringus, who's no longer with us, but he was a great guy and did a hell of a lot for us. Shelved an architecture career to just to concentrate on the band. Took us to England, and a really wonderful bloke. So this clip is one of our better known songs. I rather like it. It features the Hawaii 5/0 theme as the guitar solo, which we thought it was a great idea at the time. Turned out it wasn't, because we don't get any money for it anymore. Because the original publishers of the music said that we don't have the right to do that, because they lost the original paperwork. Nonetheless, it's still around, and I think it's still an okay song. Aloha, Steve and Dano.